अभी बीच में.
Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to this amazing session on the discussion around languages that we're doing today. We are celebrating National Reading Day, which is in the honor of Mr. P.M. Tanikar. ये केरला के एक छोटे से गांव से आते हैं, वहां से उन्होंने शुरू किया और कुछ ही सालों में 6,000 लाइब्रेरीज को अपने नेटवर्क में दे दिया बिकॉज ही वन पर्सन who understood the worth of reading, the worth of language, how important books are, and the library movement that we started, what was started in a small village and expanded throughout the state, eventually made Kerala as the most literate state of India. We have a 100% literacy rate, which is not good. He understood the value of books. He understood the value of reading. And when we say books, reading, what is most important, I personally feel, is is language. And that is why we decided to dedicate this National Reading Day to languages. We have been having different kind of discussions since morning. And now what we are going to do is we are going to talk to brilliant author Vaishali Shroff, an award-winning author, and she has got so many books to her credit. And one of her recent works is Taatung Tatung. Now, when I picked up this book, so I was just browsing through books, and a person walked up to me and said that this is one book you must read. So I said, okay, fine. The name sounds familiar. So थोड़ा सा टेढ़ा सा नाम है. Let me figure out what it is, and then it came to me that I've heard this word somewhere. And when I eventually read the chapter, I realized, and looked up and then also why this name. But the full title is quite interesting. The title is Taatung Tatung and other amazing stories of India's diverse languages, and that's exactly what we are going to do today, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Vaishali Shroff, who has been patiently waiting while I was doing all the talking and the kind of work that she has been doing. Vishali, welcome to Libration, welcome to this small initiative that we have started. Just to give you a quick background, we work with schools, we work with students, and we are trying to encourage children to read better, read more. And what we are also trying to do is we are trying to tell them that you don't always have to run after celebrated authors from abroad, where there are a few, but then it's the number can be counted on fingers. So they know a couple of major titles. Okay, this is a good book. We have to read this, but somehow, oh, this is probably just my view or what I have observed when I have been, when I travel across India. There are few names which they get to hear over social media or through word of mouth, and then they try to stick to those. Whereas when I go to libraries, when I go to bookstores, I realize that the kind of content that is hiding in corners of India and the Indian authors that the content that they are producing is amazing. In this journey of interacting with school students, I have also come across many books, not just in school libraries, but otherwise also. And of all the authors, when I started reading your work, I realized that you have actually understand the depth not only of language, but you also understand your audience. You understand that what exactly should be taken to which person. Uh, when I read this book, this was actually recommended to me by someone who's very senior in Penguin Publishers, and they said that of all the books that we have published, and I believe that you'll also take this as a big compliment. So this person told me that of all the books that we have published, this is the first book that I want to hand you because this is something that you should be reading. So the person who actually recommended this book to me was a senior person from Penguin. Uh, Tatung Tatung. Tatung Tatung in itself is a very interesting term. And I would like to start with this that uh, what does this Tatung Tatung mean?
Okay, first
So,
of all, Vikramjit, thank you so much for having me. Happy World Reading Day to everybody who's listening in. I think this was a very hard to refuse invite, because how can I say no on Reading Day, right? This is what we are. This is what I'm living for, to create content that children can read and for times to come. And Tatung Tatung, I feel, is one such book that not just children, I think people of all ages. I mean, if somebody asks me, I just say that it's 9 to 99. I think everybody should read a book like this, because I personally feel that I wrote it a little bit late. This should have been written by me, or somebody else should have written it yesterday, you know. Uh, so coming back to your question, Tatung Tatung, uh, when I was doing my research and when I was writing my stories, I wanted to feature stories from the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Uh, and when I was studying the Andamanese language and stories around them, I read about Boasini, the last speaker of one of the great Andamanese languages, and she passed on in 2010. And Tatung Tatung are words from a song that she sang. Padma Shri Anvita Abhi has beautifully recorded this extinct language in uh, through songs, lullabies, stories, as much as she could get the speakers or even rememberers of these languages to recall, so that she could understand and translate it to English for all of us to read. And Tatung Tatung actually means dance, dance. Uh, in their language, and the song goes like air chuo tatung tatung tatung, which means clean the place and let's dance 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 dance. And I thought that this would be my tribute. The actual title of the book was Let's Talk, and then I changed. Yeah, it was Let's Talk, and then I changed it to Tatung Tatung, because I thought this would be my a small tribute to endangered and extinct languages around the world. And if anybody who said, I mean, right now you said Tatung Tatung, maybe in my own little way, I created a speaker of that language, even if it's just two words. Uh,
Yes.
so I'm just that this is that. Yeah, that's it. And if you see on the top here, this lady
Yeah.
here, she's the one who sang the song.
And for those who are interested, this song is available. This recording is available on YouTube
Yes,
because
yes.
I so Anvita ji is so lucky that she was able to record it, and then we are so lucky that she was able to bring it to rest of the world and upload it just before that old lady passed away, and she was the last speaker of the language
Yeah.
mentioned. The language has died, but right now let me start with one aspect uh, where at least Indians believe the language started. I mean, we started communicating with each other. And this whole communication journey somehow started with Bhimbetka. Why I'm saying so is because, yesterday also we were doing one workshop where we were talking about the River Valley civilization, the culture, this and that. And when we were analyzing the timeline, we realized that at least within India, the oldest written references that we have, it may not be exactly a language as we understand it today, but through down south towards Konkan and Tamil Nadu region through petroglyphs and geoglyphs, and in Bhimbetka through cave paintings and all, they were trying to give some message to us, which is a language in its own right when they are trying to pass message. And when I was reading your book and I reached the last section of the book, which is the acknowledgements, that section actually starts with Bhimbetka, and I was quite surprised and intrigued. So, what's the story of Bhimbetka associated with you and this book?
So the seeds of this book were sown in very much inside the Bhimbetka caves. So I this was, I think, in 2018 or 19, and I was invited for a lit fest in Bhopal. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and I said, I'm going to Bhopal, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to go visit the Bhimbetka rock shelters. So a friend agreed, and two of us, in the wee hours of the morning, around 4:30, we left uh, for Bimbetka, and around 6:30, we were already there, and the only people in the caves were myself, my friend, and a very sleepy security guard. Okay, and he agreed to show us the caves. Okay, and when I went inside the cave, I thought, I'll hear echoes, I'll see bats, and I had these preconceived notions about being in a cave. And then I saw all these beautiful art done on walls, on ceilings, and from one cave to another. There are 750 caves actually in Bimbetka with cave art, but they have, I think, opened about 18 to 20 to public to see. Okay, so we are going from one cave to another, and initially I didn't feel much, but then I realized that I it was like the ancestors were communicating with me. I started reading, interpreting, trying to say, understand what the art was telling me. And I said, okay, here I am, talking to my ancestors. Maybe they are trying to communicate something with me even after thousands and thousands of years. Maybe it's a language, maybe it's the beginning of a language, but I wasn't too sure because art is so subjective. Art is a beautiful way of communicating and expressing, but what you would understand is not necessarily what I would understand or take away from it. And that's where my journey began. I said maybe this is where languages began, and that's where I started, thinking of stories and writing down and making notes about what I felt there. And then later that year, I visited the Harappan site at Dholavira, where I saw plaques in the IBC, or the Indus Valley Civilization script, which is the only undeciphered language and script in the world. And I said to myself, this is probably a dead language. It's presumed to be dead. We don't know if it evolved into something else. Um, and I've seen the probable birth of a language. So if a language is born, if a language dies, maybe it lives. It's a living entity, and what happens in between? And I was so intrigued by the whole thing that I decided to, uh, you know, go on this journey to explore more about our languages. I'm, to all the viewers and listeners, I'm not a linguist. I'm not an expert in languages. I'm just a passionate author, and I love to take stories to children that they've never heard, that they've never read about, and in the process, I also get to learn a lot about them. So yes, this it's been a fascinating journey. This book. So yeah, that's where Bimbetka comes in.
Lovely, lovely. Uh, that's probably how you also figured out that okay, how the language starts and how it evolves. So was with Tatung Tatung also. We said that language is gone, it's dead. A language can die. If the people who speak it stop communicating, stop using that language, if the people are no more, or because of any XYZ reason, if the people just don't use the language, we say that the language has died because it cannot be passed on. But how is the language born? And I think I have not. Yeah, actually, yes. I have not seen a better book than this one who can talk about the birth of the language, the way you have put it, the way you have narrated right from the introduction on how language is conceived and how language evolves. You have done it very beautifully, but right now I
Thank
want
you.
you to share with our audience uh, how a language is born, birth
I
of the
think
language.
what I mean by a language is born. So the book, as you know, is takes you through the life cycle of a language, from birth to growth, evolution, to endangerment, to death, to even revitalization and rebirth. And when I say that a language is born, or it means that it doesn't really exist in nature. It's not around us. It is born from a need, an inherent need to communicate, because we are social animals. We cannot live in isolation, and we need to communicate with each other to survive. And it's not just us. All creatures, big and small, on this planet communicate with each other in their own beautiful ways. And whether it is through gestures, whether it is through sounds, through music, through songs, we all have this inherent need to communicate with each other. And some languages are born of a need to communicate, some are born from a need to survive. uh, like you will see across various chapters, why, where I have picked languages and shown how they, after, just like how we are born, we grow and we evolve and we adapt and change, and that is how we live and grow, right? And the same thing happens with languages. So yeah, that is what I mean when I say languages are born. It means that we create it, we give birth to it based on our needs to communicate with each other.
Absolutely. Also mentioned in your book, when one language dies, another. What does this statement mean?
So it's not literal that when one language dies, another one is born. It's more metaphorical in a way that, say, in life we hear about death and loss all around us, but at the same time we also hear about birth and people living healthily. So just like that, when I was doing my research for the book, and when I was studying endangered and dead languages, uh, I accidentally chanced upon languages that were recently discovered by teams that work specifically on endangered languages and reviving them and recording them, and so that they don't go extinct. They create dictionaries so that future generations can read and learn, and the language survives for generations to come. And I came across one such language in a remote village in Arunachal Pradesh, which was discovered about, I think, in 2008 or 2009, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, and it's spoken by only about 2,000 people, 2,500 people in that village. Uh, but this language may be existing for maybe centuries, I don't know, okay? But nobody knew about it. Nobody knew because these people thought that if we start talking using our language that only the small group of people speaks, we will probably be considered as outcasts. We will not be considered as part of mainstream society. We will be considered as marginalized. We will be a minority. We will not enjoy rights that the other people, and the basic rights, fundamental rights that we all must enjoy as citizens of our country. And so what they do is they blend in with the majority, the more dominant languages, the more dominant the societies that speak the because they all need jobs, they all need a livelihood, right? They cannot do that if they continue speaking their language. It was just that accidentally this team from National Geographic discovered this language, and now they have given it wings, in terms that now they are getting together people who speak this language, recording it, and making tools to teaching tools so that they can teach uh, children this language. So this is what I meant, that where you hear of death and of a language, there is a language out there that we still don't know, that we still need to discover, you know and it
You
is
have,
yeah.
Julia, all I was saying was that you have mentioned something very powerful when you said people were scared that if we speak in this language, we might be considered outcast. This is actually happening in all parts of India,
Yeah,
probably parts of the world, but more in India. I mean, I don't know of any other country where you are penalized for speaking your mother tongue in the classroom. India
I know.
somehow feels proud about it. India somehow feels proud about it that you are not supposed to. And look at us, we are also doing session, which is technically
Yeah,
a foreign language.
yeah,
But what is more painful to me, I mean, in schools, and because English being such a widely accepted language in majority of the world, maybe if not all, uh, what schools want to teach, I don't want to get into that aspect right now. But what I feel is that I have seen people. I've traveled almost entire country, and I've seen people. They shy away from their mother tongue, at least the dialect for sure. And they feel that if we come out with our native dialect, people will consider us as gawar. I
Yeah.
personally feel that Gawar is a respected term because of gaon se ho. You are actually from the roots. But in India, we have made this term Gawar as a gali. It's more
I
of
know.
a uh,
I know.
demeaning. What do you have to say
Call them
about
vernacular.
dialect? Sorry?
See, we call them vernacular, right? They come from
Yeah.
a vernacular school. I mean, if they have studied, you know, in their mother tongue throughout their
Yeah.
schooling, they are called vernacular kids, and they have been labeled for life. And it's not just people coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities or the rural parts of our country. It's even people from cities. If you're traveling by public transport, and you have people around you speaking in their local language, no matter what strata of society they come from, you will always you tend to look down upon them, that, oh god, uh, कहाँ
Yeah.
से आ गए type. So,
Exactly. But
this is prevalent. This is something that needs to change at a very in a big way. I mean, there's something fundamentally wrong that we have done here, and it is the what do you call, the price we are paying for being colonized for so long. It is the
don't you think
British.
that I'm sorry, I'm just cutting you. I
No,
said,
no, no
don't you
problem.
the way we are treating our dialects is
Yeah,
not decent because right now what we say is that in central India there is one language which is called Hindi. Everybody speaks
yeah,
Hindi from Rajasthan to UP
yeah,
to MP, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Bihar. So this is all Hindi speaking. But I have not been able to fathom that a person who is fluent in Braj can very well communicate with Bagdi, which is the language of Jaipur.
right.
And the same time, you go to regions of Bihar where they are speaking Maithili and all. Can a
Actually, yeah.
Maithili Marwadi person fluently without any issues, whereas technically or legally they are both Hindi speaking people. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
look at the politics that is going around languages, they both should be speaking Hindi, but they're still not able to understand. Don't forget about that. Punjab is not a big state. Punjab is quite a small state, given that so many other bigger states that we have. Still, Punjab has so many languages and dialects. Now we
In
are
fact,
starting.
Maithili and Braj and all are languages in their own right. They are not even dialects. They are proper languages. Okay, a dialect would be something. For example, Indian English is a dialect. Okay,
Yeah.
if English is a parent, you say the parent language, then Indian English is a dialect, or American English is a dialect. Um, uh, my mother tongue is Gujarati, and if I travel to Gujarat, there are so many dialects of Gujarati where I don't understand even full sentences, but when you hear them for a longer time, then you make you put two and two together, and you try to interpret what they're saying. But a dialect, what happens is that, unfortunately, in our country, where we have almost 800 languages, we have 19,500 mother languages or parent languages, where part of it are the languages themselves, but the majority of those languages are dialects. Because when I say dialect, it would mean that the accent would be different. They would be having different set of vocabulary that is added to it. The way of saying things would be slightly different, and you could even, some dialects are so strong that you could have probably categorized them as a very completely different language. But unfortunately, what happens is that these dialects don't have their own scripts. There is no written form really of the language. So maybe some dialect will still use the same script that Gujarati uses, or same other of Marathi will use Devanagari only, or so on and so forth. But because they don't have a script of their own, they are not given the say the designation of being a language. They are called a dialect.
uh, okay. Now, having this discussion, there is another thing that is coming to my mind. We say that people have stopped using their language because they feel that maybe others may not appreciate what we are trying to, the way we are trying to communicate. Then there is this whole dialect issue. Uh, India has seen migration to a big level. I mean, world's biggest migration also happened between India, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, what is now known as Bangladesh. With this, so many languages moved from here to there. One big example is Urdu. Urdu, which was supposed to be the language of Delhi, which was born in Delhi, which grew up in places like Lucknow, Rampur, different regions. All of a sudden, one guy stands up and says, "Today onwards, I am starting a new country, and this will be my official language." And crores of people sitting on the other side of the border were like, "This is a foreign language. This is a enemy language, and we will not be using it." रातों रात एक language दुश्मन language बन गई enemy language बन गई. But the people who came from that side, did we accept those languages, or did the language also become a refugee?
So see, मेरे हिसाब से ना भाषा भाषा होती है. A language is a language. There is I know there is a chapter in my book on refugee languages, where I talk about Parsis, where I talk about Sindhis, where I talk about the Bori Muslims, the Bora community. They've come from Yemen and Egypt, and we have obviously the Parsis who've come from Iran, and uh, they when they migrated to our country, they had to they had to adapt to survive. They were no, if they wanted asylum, they had to. Uh, the first thing that you have to do is, if you want to survive in a new land, you have to communicate with people there, and you have to start speaking the language of the people of the land, right? And that is how the Parsis started speaking Gujarati. And even the Bora community, when they came here, when they came to Bombay, they started speaking. They're all traders, they're all business people. So, and the language of business, was Gujarati at that time. And that is how all these communities speak a very beautiful version of Gujarati, and these are refugee language. Sindhis were refugees in their own country, uh, you know,
Yeah.
and that and so so these are you some people call them dialects, some people call them languages. This is such a huge debate even among academicians, that which language should be called a language, which language should be called a dialect. But what I feel is that if we need to go beyond these debates, we need to we need to focus on keeping these languages alive. If I take an example of just Farsi, okay, today, the maximum number of Parsis living on this planet are in Bombay. Okay, and the total number of people or speakers of Parsi language, Parsi Gujarati, in the world are no, around 20 to 25,000, right? Okay, and I have so many Parsi friends, and they all tell me, Vaishali, thode saal mein you'll find us in museums. you know they feel that that language is so highly endangered, and in our country, if the number of speakers are less than 10,000, then you don't acknowledge those languages at all. So they then it becomes then it goes towards being a dialect, and so on and so forth. So our focus should be only on keeping these languages alive, because a language is not just a language and not just what we hear. Language is a huge treasure of trove of knowledge, of cultures, of traditions, of rituals, of memories, that are associated that with that language and no other language. Like I said, for instance, there was a reason why Professor Abbi spent so many years in the Andaman with those people, because the knowledge of the biodiversity of that place is hidden in that language. If nobody
True.
today knows that language, doesn't know how to understand it, read it, speak it, we have lost that knowledge forever.
No, in fact, I would like to share this for my audience, of all the people who are listening to us right now or later. Um, there is something very interesting about the languages of Andaman Nicobar. So after this horrible tsunami happened several years back, Indian government found out that in certain areas in the Andamans, tribe did not lose anything. No human life or animal life was lost,
Yeah,
and the material that they had, even that was saved. They were quite surprised. And when they went there and did the research, they found out that it was all in the language because they had different words for different stages of tsunami. So
yes,
we,
yes,
India, mainland Indian languages, we don't have any word. Tsunami is Japanese word that we have learned from,
yeah,
we have learned this from Japanese language, which went into English, and from English it came to all the languages that we have now in India. So in those on those islands, they had different words. So when water started receding and now it would form a wave, they were able to communicate. They were able to rise to higher levels, and they were able to save themselves. So
yeah.
a
I think you
language
shared a
becomes.
very fascinating story. Yeah, yeah. Please continue.
Yes. Talking of stories, you have got many stories in this.
Yeah.
Which one is your favorite?
I don't know if I want to pick a favorite because I like each and every one of them. There are about, I think, 20 main stories, and I even love the stories that I write at the start of every section to introduce, whether it is the birth, the story of Vakdevi for birth, or whether it is the story of Modi script for extinction. I love each one of them. uh, there is this it's not the story. I think I would say there is one story in the book called Three Heroes and a Passerby,
Yes.
uh, which
Yes.
is about the mother of all South Asian scripts, the Brahmi scripts. And it's not that I love the story. I like the way I it's written, where because it the story spans generations, not generations, sorry, spans centuries. And it right from uh, King Ashoka to modern day Microsoft. It spans a huge time period. And I feel that's a very interesting story. It's like a time capsule, but it also shows that how how relevant every script and language is, and how much we are losing when we allow the every language to disappear. Because I always feel that everywhere in wherever you read about languages, they say this language is dead and that language is dead. But I think we are killing these languages. It should be, this language is killed and that language is killed, because we kill it by not speaking it, not using it. uh, so yeah, I would say read all of them, because every story is unique. And every language is important. I mean, no matter how many sequels I do to this book, I will never be able to cover every language in our country, every story. In fact, there were so many stories I wanted to include, but I was just unable to. But yes, I hope I've done
Is,
justice.
Vishali, is there any story or any chapter that you really want to add to this book now that the book is already out? It has been more than a year, if I'm not wrong. But if there
Mm.
is something that you feel कि हाँ, मुझे ये भी डाल ही देना चाहिए था, is there something like that?
Um, I do. I would have loved to write about the Nicobarese languages. I think
Uh,
uh, I was invited to speak somewhere else, and there one of the audience members asked me that, "Ma'am, you have covered Andamanese languages, but there is so much about Nicobarese that that we can write about. It's not the same." I said, "I know it's not the same. It's just that Um, I just didn't have the real estate in my book to add more stories." And also, with as a children's author, what we do is our job is not just to give everything, right? This is not a book, a reference book or something. It is a book to be read, and so that every story makes you dive deeper into that aspect of the language, or the stories are about that geography, or anything about the culture, the speakers. I think it should just make you intrigued enough to explore further yourself. And I thought that I would have definitely liked to cover Kashmir as well. I think that is, a place close to my heart. So maybe, if I do write about languages again, this
Trying
would
real
be.
hard. Yeah, government of India is trying real hard to save Sharda script because it's almost gone. I think there are seven families left, and government has been organizing
Yeah,
special camps where people can go and I was also
yeah,
invited to one. They gave us
oh,
uh, they helped us learn the script, although we've never used it. So I again forgot. But then what I found out while I was learning that script, that the Sharda of Jammu and Upper Jammu, what the Kashmiri Brahmins use as a
hmm,
script, and
script,
the old Punjabi script before Gurmukhi was the
Gurmukhi.
Lande script. So
Okay,
Lande, Gurmukhi was made out of Lande, and there is an influence of Sharda also. So how a script
right,
evolves. That's where
yeah,
my journey into this whole world of script started. My journey into the world of languages started when I first read about the Gadgaj Boli or Khalsa Bol. Khalsa Bole goes with many
okay,
names because that's the warrior language that the Khalsa
yeah,
army uses because they cannot communicate in normal language. They needed some simple language, so they replace one word with another. For example, when they say Samundar Lao, now Samundar otherwise means sea, but in
yeah.
Gadgaj Boli it means milk. So if you have to
Oh,
ask for milk, you say Samundar. If
so
you
this is
want
exactly like uh, the secret languages that I have spoken about.
you
Yeah,
know, to get into it, you'll realize that there are so many secret languages in India.
yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes you don't even need a language. For example, the Parsi, in your book also you mentioned
yeah,
they went to Sanjan, and
yeah,
if our audience is interested, you guys can pick up Kista Sanjan and read that book. The journey
yeah.
that they had is amazing. In fact,
Yes,
when they first started the Code of the King, they were not able to communicate because all the Zoroastrians they were speaking Parsi language, and the king was speaking local Gujarati dialect. They were not able to communicate. So what happened was quite interesting, and I'm sure Vishali, you are already aware of this, where they had a glass of milk,
milk.
and
Yeah, and we added sugar to it.
if I add more milk, it will overflow.
Yeah,
We don't have any space for you. So they just took out a little bit of sugar, added
sugar.
to it, then it will dissolve like sugar. You won't even notice that we exist. And that's
Yeah,
exactly what happened because the king,
yeah,
and this is something you mentioned in your book also, that king
yeah,
said, if your ladies will wear saris like our ladies, if you are ready to learn Gujarati, and he had very simple conditions that he kept. And they
yeah,
accepted all those and they got refuge. And now, what I love about Parsi community, other than food, is although I'm a vegetarian and they do have a lot of vegetarian options, which is amazing. Whenever I go to Bombay, I make sure that go at least to one Parsi Bonu, have some pasta, have their Irani chai and all that. So it's lovely. What I also love is that although they started communicating in the local language, their transition from their native language to the new language, the new land's language that they were learning was beautiful. And the words that popped in and the way now they speak is the new language that come up. It's not
yeah,
Gujarati, it's not Marathi, it's not Hindi, it's not English, it's not even
yes,
Farsi. It's a mixture of everything.
yeah,
It's beautiful. And
yeah.
uh, with the love that they speak, it
Yeah,
sounds so
and there is so
melodious.
much. They are so humorous. There is so much humor, good humor, in the way in what they say, in their phrases and idioms, and that is what some language activists are trying to preserve. They are coming up with books with Parsi idioms and phrases so that they don't go
Yeah,
extinct. In
yeah.
fact, I learned this chapter that I have written on the Parsi language. I had consulted an expert who is a Russian. So I was,
Oh,
yeah. So a Russian had lived in Bombay, in the western part of Gujarat, of India, for 3 years to study the Parsi language, and he has created an audio and visual record of the language so that it's for posterity, right? Like we say that, so that the language doesn't go extinct. Because what happens is that, like say the Ahom language, in Assam. Uh, Beautiful scripts and Buranjis are there, but nobody knows how to read them. Nobody knows how the language sounds. So how do you recreate the language, right? The other way around also things are happening. So
true, true.
want that to happen. He didn't want ki, "Arey, tomorrow, I can read everything, but I don't know what the words mean. I don't know how to pronounce them. What are the phonetics like?" So he created audio visual records of rituals like weddings, funerals, birthdays, and all their festivals, so that people understand, and future generations can refer to their cultural and traditional knowledge in their own language.
Right. It's quite interesting, and there are so many people who are actually trying to save languages. I know of a few people who are working in the region of Chandigarh, Shimla, because the language that goes from Shimla to Ambala is called Puadi. The region is called Puad, but the
Okay.
language is of Hindi and Punjabi. Now, the problem with that is that Punjabi speaking people say that you are not speaking proper Punjabi, you're adding Hindi words to it, and it sounds like what you already mentioned, that they feel
Yeah.
inferior, and Hindi speaking people also treat them as inferiors because they are adding some Punjabi word. But this language in itself is very beautiful. Now it has been reduced to a dialect, and very interestingly, when Wikitongues started a project to document this language, many people came forward, and then a movement started to save Puadi language, because that's the true language of this entire region, the region of Puad where Chandigarh was established. The language of was Chandigarh, the area was originally marked to be one of the largest prisons, but the British had lack of funds, so they could not start that project. But the area was cleared for that, and then India got independence, and the same land was used for a new city. But in this entire journey, when the villages were moved out and things happened, the language also diluted, and then Himachal, Punjab, and Haryana, they were divided on the basis of language of Hindi and Punjabi. Puadi
Okay.
died in the middle. Same happened with Bawalpuri. So Bahawalpur was on one side and it went into Pakistan. All the people who were in Bahawalpur, they came to Punjab, started living in the Patiala region, but now they had to speak Malwai, which is the language of Patiala, and they had to leave their Bawalpuri. So that language also went extinct, and then another group came forward, and they are trying to now revive that language, and a lot of work is going on over there.
Yeah.
Uh, Okay, we're running towards the end of this session, and there is one question that has been bothering me, and I really want an answer to that, because when I picked up this book, I have a habit. My habit is that I read from cover to cover, and when I open the very first page where there is text, uh, Puffin has written your introduction, something about you,
Okay.
and I want to read one line out of this. The line
Okay.
says, hear me out. It says, Shroff loves talking to children over adults, chocolate over anything else, and wants to be a tree in her next life. Now I want to talk about this. Why tree? I mean, talking about languages. Are we saying that trees can speak better?
No, trees communicate so well. It's just that they don't make a big deal out of it, and it's not just because of that. It's trees are survivors. I feel uh, they're they everything they do is they give, right. They are very giving. They don't take anything in return. They don't expect anything in return, and I love trees. If you see me walking, you'll probably just see me just standing next to a tree, just staring at it, doing nothing. Or I am you'll find me inside a forest in every few months, uh, and I make a record of every new tree that I see. I'm just fascinated, and so yeah, and I'd love to be one. I think it's better than being uh, a human being. I don't know, this kind of world that we are going, and I hope that there are more people. I think there is a lot of hope, there is a lot of beauty in this world that we must see. And uh, and and I just hope I just feel every time I see a tree, it brings a smile to my face. So maybe I'll bring a smile to somebody's face when they see me as a tree.
You know, even if you would have said a word or two, I would have understood. You know why? Because this entire session we have spent almost 45 minutes today talking to our lovely audience. Uh, During this entire session, you have made an eye contact. But when it came about trees, you were lost in your own world. You were like last 30 seconds. I would ask people to just rewind and watch it. And you were because now you were in your real zone, which is something that you really, really, really enjoy. And I am sure if we arrange a session for you in Lab of Nature, I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
think there can be a better welcoming session, and because
absolutely.
you will be in your real habitat where you actually enjoy yourself and you enjoy your audience. So
No,
this
I
is
think
what I'm
it's,
going to
I
do. I'm
speak
going to talk
for
about this.
many people here. I think I speak for many people. I think there are many tree lovers out there, and who are actually doing, work to conserve them, and and I feel uh, we need more tree lovers in this on this planet. Uh, and Yeah, it's
No, this has been a lovely discussion. I'm so glad we did this. And I would love to continue this discussion because there is so much that has been left. We really want to talk about it. And okay, we've got one question, which is any comments on the heavy influence of foreign languages on our education system as opposed to indigenous ones? Do you think there is a gap to bridge?
Of course. So there is a chapter in my book all about English to English, where I think talk about uh, how things changed forever after the English Act was passed, and in our country, earlier education was in Sanskrit and Urdu, and how the British. Convinced people in our country that Sanskrit is a language, is a higher language of priests, and Urdu is a language for poetry. How can you learn important subjects such as math and science in those languages? If we were a newly minted independent country who needs to find a footing to prove their strength and independence to the whole world, and one of the ways of doing that was through uh, engineering marvels, through infrastructure, and that's the way you show progress to the rest of the world. And that is what our government also wanted. The only way to do that was to have more people in our country study English, uh, math and science, and also the British wanted to create British wouldn't want to. I mean, we are a country of so many languages. It was not possible for them to learn all our languages, right? So they said, "You learn our language." you know they wanted to create people who look like them, speak like them, behave like them, right? And I think they've managed to do that to a large extent. And what has happened is that that has taken away from our roots, because today you go for a job, today you go even to study. They say that you have to know English, you have to know, without that you don't get decent jobs. And I'm not saying English is not important. It is important, and it is becoming increasingly important as the days go by. We all want good jobs, good quality of life for our families. And but what I am trying to do through this book, and I think this is a good way to to end this conversation, is that while we are not purists, we cannot give up. Like, English is my bread and butter. I can't stop writing in English. I can't stop speaking in English. The reason we are communicating right now is that we have this one common language between all of us. So it's very important to have this language. But at the same time, nobody has asked us to go away from our roots. Nobody should stop us or is stopping us from speaking our own languages. Let's be proud of our languages. Let's be proud in speaking our matrubhashas in public places, everywhere, through relatives, to friends, and not be ashamed of it. Let's read. There's so much rich literature. I'm also doing translations from Gujarati to English, and when I read stories written for children in Gujarati, I'm just, I sometimes I curse myself that I have lost on so many stories that I could have known, so many characters that are lost to us just because we don't know how to read, or we don't understand our own language, right? So I urge people to read stories, listen to music, because as Miss Anbita Abhi has rightly said, you know, uh, songs live forever. And we may not know the language, but we can sing songs in that language, in any language. And that's the most beautiful way of learning any language. So please, I don't know if I've addressed this question properly, but I feel the only way to breach this gap is by speaking our language, to not just to others, to future generations, to our children, so that they will also speak. Otherwise, your if your children do not speak to their offsprings in their mother, in their parent tongues, then that language has died in your family, at that in that generation, in your generation itself. That is how speakers are reducing, right? So this it's just, I think, the most beautiful and the simplest way to conserve any languages by speaking it. So don't, be close to your roots. We are a free country. We are free to speak any language we do. And I think we should be very proud of the fact that India is one of the only countries on this planet where we everybody knows at least two languages. We are all multilingual, and I think it is something to be proud of. And I think we must exercise our right to express in the language we wish to. And it's only when we do that, then the language will survive for generations to come.
Very well said and very appropriate. I'm sure. Actually, I think this answers, and it is not just with English. Now we have got French and German also getting deep in. Portuguese, you have also mentioned a little bit about that. So there are so many things when it comes to language, and one life is not enough to understand even a single language. And here we are talking about a country which has got 800 probably thousand languages and over 2,000 dialects. Uh, but books like these, because information about so many languages, something that we cannot take to every classroom, especially with the middle school or maybe the junior school. But it is books like these which are, these authors, they understand the value of storytelling, and they understand that how you can structure something and deliver it to the right audience, where it not only enjoys it, understands it, and falls in love with it. So if you want your children to understand the value of language, and if you are also facing this problem कि घर पे हम बच्चों को इतना बोलते हैं पर वो हमारी मातृभाषा में बातें नहीं करते हैं. I mean, even at my own home, my kid understand Punjabi very well, but I have to push my daughter to speak Punjabi. My son, who's 4 years younger to my daughter, he still speaks in Punjabi, but somehow my daughter shies away from speaking Punjabi. So I would say that uh, if you want to make your children understand, you cannot just go to them and say, "Oh, you have to speak this language. पता नहीं वरना क्या हो जाएगा." No, please tell them interesting stories, and this is the book that can give you stories. We have already shared the Amazon link in the description, and now it is in the comments also. Please click on it, get your copy, read it, and we'll talk again about it. And eventually, let me share one thing with you. For every book, we have our own matrix. We do a proper rating, and then many of these sheets were filled before I messaged you that we want to talk to you. So for every author that we speak to, for every book that we pick, we go through a rigorous process where 4 to 5 people do proper rating, and we have got a 30 parameter checklist on which we test a book. And after that, we create our review and comments. And there are very few books which have reached a certain level. In the morning, we had a discussion with Karthik Venkatesh where we were speaking about his the 10 language that he's written on. And now we are talking to you. These two books, as far as languages are concerned, these two books in India have topped our list. And very beautifully written. Thank you not only for coming to this show, but a bigger thank you for writing this, for bringing this to public, because this is something that every school must have, every child must read. Thank you, Vishali. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who took the time out this afternoon to be with us and listening. And I hope you do read this, make it a part of library so more people can access it. And I hope even after reading this book, even if one person decides to start speaking more in their mother language and puts in more effort there, or even shares this book and spreads the word about it, I think my purpose is achieved. Thank you. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining, and we hope to see you all again very soon. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.